Okay, we are back. Here is the canvas. Let's just get started. We're going to need more purple. I think we'll bring purple up here, blues around here, maybe a dash of purple up there. So layer one, let's not be shy. Lots of water. Get that purple broken down. So we don't want any specks of outright colour, we just want really watery paint. And let's go for it. Load it up again. You can be really liberal with this. Really liberal. We're just going to keep building it out. You will get little specks as you go, and don't worry about them. That's just little flicks of the paintbrush, the bristles. They will get gobbled up. They're not going to hinder your work, and they won't leave a mark there by the time you're done. Because this first layer is going to be so wet. I'm going to add a bit more water to start dragging this up. There's the middle here. So we want to try and keep this paint as wet as possible. So when we do start bringing the blues in, they can do some of that nice paint bleeding that we talked about, where it all merges with one another. Now we've got a rough shape in mind. We want it to sort of come up here, but we haven't got to be all like, oh, it's just going to swirl in like this with nice blunt edges. Nope, it's going to all merge at some point or another. You just want intense colour to be in its pocket. So it doesn't matter if the colour merges where it's all touching one another, just those particular pockets to keep a nice boldness to it. We'll try and keep this as purple as possible, but where it bleeds into the blues, it'll be indigo and violets and so on. I think we need more water on that. Right, we'll get the purple par way into where we want it. And we're going to start bringing the blues in. So a bit more purple. Make sure that we reiterate these wet edges here. And again, don't worry too much. You'll see there's sort of little bits where it's breaking away from the canvas underneath. That's not going to matter in these early layers. These early layers aren't going to cover everything. You want it to cover quite a bit, but they're not going to cover everything. Okay, we'll start bringing that blue in now. The cerulean blue, which is really, really nice. So again, lots and lots of water. Bring that right down. And we'll take this one from this corner. We need more water still. You want it, you can see from there, watery to the point where you can barely see the bristle marks. I'm going to take it just over the edge there, so I want to bring it in here so these can start becoming friends. So paint. It don't matter if some of this speckles into the purple, that's going to add to the effect. Let's get some more of that blue. Load it up with water. Bring it back down. We're going to bring a touch of this blue over here as well, because this is where we're going to work, not faster, but just we got to bear in mind what's wet and what isn't, and what we want to merge and what we don't. So as long as we get in there quick enough for there not to stop being a line forming, because we're working in such a condensed palette, we can always go back, get the purple back in there, water that down, bring the purple back to life a little bit. Now we're going to get some of that darker blue. Again, don't worry about things like that, it will happen, but the beauty of what we're doing right now is it's all going to bleed into one another. We want to get this in here now. We can start becoming one with the purple. In the next few layers, I won't be so brazen as to leave the water all the way over there. I'll have it this side or closest to whatever point I'm working on. So we don't drip, because towards the end you're not going to want, at the moment you can get away with things like that. You just bring it out a bit more. When you get to, say, the third and fourth layer, you won't be able to get away with things like that, so you'll have to be a little bit more careful with your application. But until that point, have fun. Spread it around. Try to bear in mind not to press too hard with the brush, and to keep that water aspect full. Like here it's a bit too pigmenty, but a few too many bubbles going on in one area, so let's bring that out a bit. This constantly bearing in mind where you were wet last. So we can keep those lines at bay. So we don't want those lines that you can see where we've stopped for too long and allowed them to creep in. That's where we've got to bear in mind this guy up here as well. Be bringing him down. In fact, he's going to be quite a bit of the dark blue, so let's load that up. Bring that up there. water. So this first layer, like we saw in the test, is going to be very, very semi-translucent. But it will get more and more pigment as we build up. So we're not going for a whole lot of vibrancy right now. We're just going for our base. So let's come back down here. Let's get a bit more purple in the mix. Maybe bring some of that in. I think so. We're going to have a little purple pocket up here. Let's give that quite a bit of a rinse out. Get some of this mess. Let's bring some of that silver in there actually. We don't want to forget about the silver because that does have a nice effect. Right, load you up, get you really wet, bring you in here. Right, we don't want to leave any edge too long so that it doesn't have that chance to set and have a bold line in the middle of all of this. Yeah, we could definitely do with more of the ultramarine blue. We've been getting a little shy with that up there. Let's bring that in up here. Some of this down here. Some of this down here. I'll bring everything towards the middle of it now. Yeah, we definitely need some more of the cerulean blue. Let's get that really loaded and broken down. Boom, right in the middle there. Bring it out to the rest of this. Try not to lose that bit of a purple line that's going on. A bit more water. More cerulean blue. More water in there. Water. Now I think you can tell we've sped up a little bit so we can fight these drying lines. But it's also very free. There's not like, oh, this has to go here, this has to go there. It's all still quite free, so you can act quick and it won't look bad. So that's part of the sporadic nature of this one. Keep adding water. Don't forget along the way, because you might, but you want to keep this as wet as possible as you're going. So we'll bring some more ultramarine blue in that top left corner. Don't want to get carried away with cerulean. We need a bit of depth. You know, a bit more of a deep blue. And it will build up. Let's see, with the layers, it will build up. It's already looking good as a first layer. I'm quite pleased with it. We just want to keep that wet. And remember not to... You're going quick, going to try and remember not to brush stroke or press too hard. Try and remember to keep just moving that water around the plate. So we'll bring some of this in here. Some of the purple silver. Well, it's a bit of everything right now, but this has got the silver in it. Put some of that coming down here. A load of water start dispersing it. Come into contact there. A bit more of this blue up here. A bit more of this water up here. Right, we are starting. Maybe a couple of bits we've got to go round and just have a look-see at. A little bit of a rub over where needed. Get that purple a bit more. And back down here, just a touch. Blob of purple up that corner there, and that is gonna give us some grief if we don't get rid of it. Right, we'll bring a bit of this up in here. A bit more purple in that pocket. And a whole heap of water. Purple pocket. Okay, we are very nearly done with layer 1. Which means we're going to have to take a pause because we can't really move this. We need it to dry exactly where it is. Because it's looking good exactly where it is. Now we need that. Okay, now as you can see, well I think you can see anyway, apart from the reflection of the ring light, we've gone suitably over the edges here. They're going to build up as we're going. Now there's a couple of little points where the white of the canvas underneath start to come through. That, like I said before, that doesn't really matter at this point. You will get that when you're working with such watery paint. But since we're working in layers, it, won't matter so much on this first one. Second one, use the second layer when we get there as an opportunity to really go into those white zones, the little white zones that are left. Because right now, whilst it's wet, I'll cover them up, but then the brush will absorb other bits that are laying around, so you'll end up with more. So we'll just let this sit now. We'll let this rest. Make sure there's nothing obviously wrong right now before we let it rest. I don't think there is. So we are going to have another pause while that dries itself. And we're going to have to let this fully dry, because unlike the test strips, we want this to be okay. We want this to be fully dry before we do the next layer. This little zone here, where it's most wet, has got a really nice effect to it. I think if I move that into the centre of the light. The little spot in the centre of the light is where we want the whole picture to be, or the whole background. Like that, nice and bold, but not in your face. Well, not too in your face anyway. So we shall have another pause, come back when that's dry, and then get the next layer done. Like I say, this will be a bit of a longer process than the others, because this is going to need far more layers. So number one, I thought 3 to 4. So we'll see come the third one whether we need the 4th or not. So yeah, we'll have a break and I'll see you again in a moment. Okay, we are back. It is the day after, because this needed to thoroughly dry, and it is looking really good. I'm definitely convinced we chose the right technique to go with here. So what we're going to do now is get that second layer on. So I covered up the palette from yesterday so that we've still got that to use today. So none of that's going to waste. We will be adding a little bit more to it as we go in. But to begin with, that's fine. Oh, actually, we'll add a bit of silver. Not white. We still got white. A little bit of silver to that. But apart from that, let's get that brush loaded up. And what we're going to do is we're going to keep to the same sort of colour zone. So the cerulean blue down here, the purple here, the ultramarine up here, and I think it was a touch of ultramarine up there too. So we'll go straight in with the purple. So let's get that brought up here separately. It's slipping into that blue. Load the brush up. Get it nice and wet. And let's start building up these layers. Now hopefully the camera and the canvas didn't shift too much. I knocked both of them several times over the night. But like I say, they're in the breaks, that's the only thing that will happen. I didn't touch the canvas apart from knocking it. I want to keep all the work actually being recorded so you can see what I'm doing. Oh yes, and I forget, we weren't going to be so brazen as to keep bringing this over the top of the drawing. We're going to move this water to whatever zone we're working in. So since we're working down here in the purple zone, we'll bring it over there so we don't start dripping random purple splodges all over the place like I started to. I think we will be getting a bit more purple out. We will carry the water wherever we need it to minimize those drips. So load the brush up, colour, making it as smooth as possible. And then loading the brush up with water. And these next few layers will be your opportunity to fill in any of those little tiny whites that peeked through from last time. And we're going to be working fairly quick, again like yesterday, just so we can keep all these wets bleeding into one another. Let's load some more purple up. Load some more water up. Keep those edges nice and wet. Now that lovely, lovely cerulean blue. I'm going to load the brush up and keep it nice and wet. Now this will be very similar to yesterday, just getting this layer on and then letting it dry, depending on how thick this layer ends up. How watery it is will depend on how long it takes to dry. But I've started nice and early today, so I should be able to get more than one layer in. We'll also take these opportunities today as well to make sure that we have gone over that edge so that there's none of that white peeking in many of these edges. Trying to make sure that any of those white bits get sunk into. Like I say, we've got at least 3 layers to get those white bits covered up, potentially 4, but it takes as many as it takes. So if you're doing this at home and it's not bold enough for you, then by all means add more layers, build it up until you're happy with it. I mean, I've said 3 or 4, but we'll see, it might take more, it might not. We will see as we're going. Let me come and get a bit more of that purple in there. Like I said, we're going to try and roughly match where we began. Now don't worry if while you're doing this you don't quite cover everything that you did in the first layer. That will just add to the effect. You will have bits cross over with one another. Let's get some of this big old mix from out the middle here. So you'll have some of the purple overlay some of the blue sometimes, some of the blue overlay the purple, somewhere it doesn't touch either, and that's cool. That'll add to the layers, because Obviously they don't all just stop in space, they don't just suddenly not touch one another or cross over one another. It's like a big party up there. A no rules party where everyone can use whatever space they like. Let's get a little bit of that ultramarine involved now. So we're creeping up there. The more you do this, the more bold you'll get with applying it. Get a little bit of that silver brought in. Oh yes, I will show you the dried test bits. Hopefully you can see what I can see. The silver did add a nice subtle starry effect to the paint, because obviously it weren't outright metallics or blobs of silver here and there. It just added a subtle glimmer, which was really nice. We'll try and enhance that by being a little bit more generous with the silver this time, especially since it's watered down as well. It's almost like a shimmer powder. I think you can see it getting a little bit more bold as we work up. I think looking at what I'm recording, the next thing that I'll address is this ring of light that you're getting. I'll try my spotlight, or I'll try giving that one a cover so it's not just light glaring down, because each time I look up to see that we're doing okay and that we're still recording fine, I see that light first, which means that's what you'll be seeing as well, so we're going to have to address that. So whilst we've got a nice clear image here, I mean, if I turn the light off briefly so you can see what we have, it's not terrible. I guess we don't actually need the light right now. We'll try it for a little period of time without the light, see how that goes. It's obviously still working out the lighting here. Some of that nice ultramarine up that corner. It's determined not to go in that little bit. So even if you have to end up doing that, just to make sure it sinks in those little white bits that are determined to peek through every time. We'll give them a little reminder that they're not going to peek through. We'll pop a little droplet in their face. Okay, we'll try and get a little bit more of this cerulean blue up that corner. Around here. nice and wet. Push it around. I think that's starting to get a bit more vibrant. This, oops, just painted the socket. This is what we are aiming for. Let me put my really watery brush down before I start dripping everywhere. As we build up the layers, this is going to get bolder and bolder. And it's going to look beautiful behind the jet black silhouette of the cat and the planets in the forefront. I think we'll just add a little bit more to this layer. Make sure those white points are being pretty much flooded. Just working with such wet paint. You can put a droplet anywhere within reason and it'll blend out. It won't do. A tiny bit more up there, then we'll let this one dry. I'll show you. You naughty dot there. Right, we're going to let this layer dry. Leave that all up there for now. Oh, it's just a little thing, but it'll help you along the way if you're not familiar with paintbrushes and just general wear and tear of them. If you're not using it, either pop it in upside down or lay it down somewhere. As the brush soaks in the water, it'll eventually like bend up and weigh itself down. Then you'll have a brush that's permanently kinked. But let it out, lay down or stand upside down, and you'll keep your brush nice and straight. I don't think I've got a kinky one here at the moment, but I will have. One inevitably ends up forgot about at some point. So we'll leave that there for the second. Cover up our little palette here, though I've done a bit of a whoopsie there by letting it soak in. That doesn't matter. You just want it to be kept wet so you can use it again and again. So the pieces that we did yesterday, these are the test pieces. So this is the really watery one. I'll just tuck that piece over there for now. Let the drips go a bit haphazard, as you can see. We've got this sort of alien jungle thing going on. But ignore the big fat wells, which obviously we're not going to get here because this is a nice flat canvas. This was, as you can see, the water did what it does to paper. It's gone far from flat. But you can see the effect that we're aiming for. This build-up of bold, merging colours. In fact, you can already see it better on this one. But we'll keep this because this will be our experiment piece for like flicking the stars on and whatnot for our next layers. This one was the brushed test piece, which just, even down there, which looks quite nice, it wasn't right. You can see the brush strokes. It's not smooth. It's not airy enough. The sponge in the middle wasn't too bad, It might have been a better test result if it had stayed a bit flatter, but it's still, I think you can all agree out there, potentially anyway, that this is definitely a better technique. And that was the sponge being squeezed on and dripped and let run everywhere, and this was the sponge being applied directly with a sponge like you would a paintbrush, and it has a nice effect. The silver, I don't know if you can see that. Let me pop the light on for a second, see if that reflects it a little bit better. There's a slight shimmer to it, but it's not heavy. So it does have a nice effect, the silver being in there. So anyway, those are those bits. We will keep them. Let me turn that back off for a second. We will keep them because they will come in handy to do more tests on, because one way or another we have purple and blues there in case we go a little bit over the top with speckling on the watered one. We may as well keep them both. Right, so for now that's all we can do. We've got to let that dry, so see you again in a moment. Well, the moments on here will be like click, clock, done. As for me, it's probably going to be at least a couple hours, 2-3 hours. It's not as thick as yesterday. Well, not as much water as yesterday, so we'll see. Might surprise me. Back in a moment. Okay, and we are dry again. Well, dry enough to continue. There's a tiny bit of moist going on up there, but that's fine. So again, it's just another layer. As it stands, I'd be surprised if it was just 3, but we'll see what it looks like after we've done this one. Because at the moment it looks like it's going to need at least 4. So we're going to increase in intensity each time. So still got this mucky old palette, though I think, I mean, I don't want to give up the ghost on this now. I'll just get another one in a second. Right, let's get some of this purple ready. And again, we'll try not to paint the walls. We'll keep this water wherever we're working, so we don't keep dripping. Build up this next layer. Although maybe it will only take 3 layers. It's looking quite more vibrant on this third one. Then it might not take 4 layers for the whole thing. It might just be elements that you want to do 4 layers to. See how bold it goes after this one. Again, these don't take too long to do. It's just the waiting time in between. Where you'll find yourself feeling a little redundant. little bit of the purple dotted about. Oh, and that's, you will hear that, that's my girls playing. That's my girls playing in the background. I might pause unplanned in a second, try and get some of their energy out. Otherwise you won't hear me, you'll just hear the girls playing. So, girls, thank you. They get really excited. The big girl loves getting super woofy when she's playing, and she has a big booming bark, as you'd have heard just now. I'll try and adjust that in the editing so that you don't get deafened or suddenly jump to a big old woof in the background. Yeah, that will happen from time to time. My little setup here is in the kitchen, and this is a long thin house, so the kitchen, no doors, pretty much no doors in between things, so the kitchen trails into the living room, or the middle room trails into the front room, and the girls are keeping me company, but also trying not to get bored while they're waiting for me to do this. So they will start randomly playing and having a little woof sesh every now and again. As you can tell, they're pretty good girls, so if I ask them to shush for a second, they will. I will have to perhaps keep this layer a little bit rapid, so we can go and get some of their energy out. Give them a play. They've been ever so good while I've been doing this. Some of this in here, we'll get some of that purple. We don't want to forget purple, that silver. We don't want to forget that silver there, because it does add a really nice effect. Try and bring all these in. If you're doing a layer and you don't want any more colour added to it, then so you get some clean water, but just put water over that area. It'll help with a little bit of the bleed, so keep everything moving, but obviously it won't then add further colour to anything that you're already happy with. So don't feel like you have to, with these layers, go all, you know, whole hog. You can always just wet the areas that you want to keep the layer that they're at. I still want to go all over, so this is going to be wet all over, coloured all over. I think you can see on this one there's little to no white specks. We've had mission success in that respect. Let's bring this down a little bit. Might need to get a little bit more of that azure blue. Azure blue. It's because it's also known as azure blue. This cerulean. It's favoured for its vivid sky-like quality. So now and again I might slip up and call it azure, but it's this particular one is cerulean, but it is, let's say, of the azure family. Let's get some more of that now, actually, because we're all starting to go a bit where it's all bleeding in there to itself. Let's just pop you right up the corner there. Edge. No corners on a circle. Got a nice bit of that in there. Perfect. Yeah, let's go up the corner there. This. We are very nearly. Oh yeah, ultramarine up that corner, isn't it? See how tempting it is to go so far with that cerulean blue. It is. As you may guess, with the colour of my hoodie, it's my favourite colour. And I have mentioned it 1 or 2 times. That's how lucky I've been to start and number a line of canvases for my friend in the colour that's my favourite. So she did me a massive solid there, even though it wasn't done for me. I love working in all colours, but blue is my favourite. Right, so I think get that a bit more wet up there, a bit more merging. Let's have a look. We need, there's a couple more bits of white that are trying to erupt through. That's where you can afford to be a bit drip happy. It's so wet, it'll disperse, create quite a nice effect. We need it to be a bit more wet running through here. It seems to be a bit down there, a bit of silver, a bit more water, disperse it. Okay, I think that's a good point to pause again. Let that dry before we go for probably, so this is layer 3. I'm feeling right now it's definitely going to be a layer 4. Let me just turn that light off now. We're getting a bit of reflection again now. I'm working in the wet. though I can't have that light off because that's when the lines come back. I can subtly see them, so we'll have to put the light back on to stop those lines. What I'll have to try is I have one of these little guys. Now, this light might, oh, I don't know. I think it needs to be on charge. I don't know if that'll be any better. You're still going to have a little, unless I had it off here somewhere. Let's have a try. If that was mounted up there. It does combat the lines. Oh, I think you can see some lines, so we'll have to stick with the ring for now until I can work out. And this light can go on charge. Till I can work out what I can do with this ring light so it doesn't keep reflecting when everything's wet. Otherwise, you'll just be focusing on that ring. So anyway, we'll leave that to dry. We'll come back, we'll assess the lighting situation as we're going. Still learning curves when it comes to editing and recording. But that's part of the fun in doing something new. Like I say, art itself isn't new to me, but everything else that I'm doing right now is. So I thank you all for being really patient with me as we're going. And any helpful comments would be great. Like I've had some feedback already with adjusting the voice so that you can hear me a little bit clearer as opposed to being a little mish with music sometimes. So yeah, lots of learning curves. But like I say, I like that. That's how we get better. So another pause, let that dry and assess where we're at. See you in a moment.